few minutes ago, I had another rant where I attacked somebody who basically really pissed me off today by pretending that he's standing for nonviolence and by saying, "Oh, thank you very much to Ali Dawa, basically a hardcore Islamist who wants basically women to cover up all the time." Uh, so I went through that rant because I can't believe this person, this guy, Joseph Cohen, is such a coward, such a fraud, such a, so disingenuous, saying that the British, they're not facing an existential threat, even though you have all these women getting raped, right? But no existential threat. Some of them are Sikh, by the way. They're not actually native British. Okay, so some of them are not. They're not white people. They're not privileged. They're from India. Their families are from India. So I'm adding to that video. I'm not apologizing for a single thing that I said, and I'm going to tell you that the reason that it was so ridiculous to begin with was because he was essentially thanking Ali Dawa for preventing the Muslim crowd that was protesting Tommy Robinson from being even more violent than it was. Remember that Ali Dawa doesn't want Tommy Robinson to even speak about Islam. He says, "You can shut up. Don't talk about my religion. Don't insult my religion." Listen, Joseph, that very fact should tell you that this guy is an asshole. Okay, I'm tired of you pretending to do this whole bridge nonsense. Okay, the fact that you thanked an idiot today for making sure things did not get more violent shows how preposterous your whole pose is. Okay, this is basically his perspective of the whole problem. Joseph's, the guy who heads the Israel advocacy movement in Britain. Okay, I'm not advocating against Israel advocacy. I'm advocating against his ridiculous stance. He's saying that because so many British Muslims are anti-Israel and anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist, that poses an existential threat to Israel. But the fact that so many of those people also happen to hate Britain and hate Christians and hate their neighbors and use their neighbors for sexual favors and run grooming gangs and basically get involved in crime around the country. That's not an existential threat to Britain. Britain's fine. Everything's peachy keen over there. That's basically your position, Joseph. Think about how ridiculous you sound. You're saying that anti-Semitism among British Muslims is more of an existential threat to Israel than is their hatred of Britain is to Britain. Think about how stupid that sounds. I mean, they don't live in Israel. If you think it's such a existential threat to Israel, then how many attacks were carried out by some of these British people against the Israelis? I know for a fact that there were a couple. I do know that there was one, I think, in 2004 or something that was carried out, happened to be a British Muslim. But I'd say that why don't you address both threats? Why don't you look at it as something that's a threat to everybody? Why do you have to be so selfish, Joseph? Why does everybody have to feel sorry for you? Why can't people look after their own interests? Why do you have to be such a douche? That's my question. Okay, why can't you just respect other people's right to address the threats to their own country? That's really the reason that I'm giving you such a hard time. Okay, you say thank you to some douchebag for not being as violent as he could have been, right? And yet you even mentioned that some other people that were there still became violent in the Muslim crowd. So you're saying thank you that you weren't as violent as the other people, or that you try to prevent some of that violence. Let me explain something to you. When you're going to be committing an act of violence, it's pretty dumb to do it in a place where there's tons of police officers. So it's very likely that these people who were there would commit other acts of violence if there were not police officers present. So you're really saying thank you to them for being smart enough not to be arrested by the police who were right there. So that's what's dumb about your retarded post earlier. Okay, that's why I'm giving you a hard time. Okay, that's why your whole equivocating about this and saying, but Tommy Robinson is also an asshole because he doxes people and whatever. Well, he went to somebody's house. He's gone to people's house who have told him that he should die, that his family should get threatened, that he deserves everything that he's getting. This is a guy who's been harassed for years by the police, who's been in prison several times, and you basically think, it's the same, it's the same idea, whatever. Tommy's got a bunch of nutters on his side too. That's basically your perspective. Everybody has a bunch of there's bad apples in every barrel. That's basically your perspective on this. This is why you're so ridiculous. This is why your movement is basically a joke at this point, because you complain when people threaten you at your events, and then you go to the speaker's corner and Tommy Robinson is there, and you have this mass of people who are saying, well, we don't want Tommy Robinson to speak. He's offensive and he defames our religion. So you're saying thank you to them for not being violent. That's very intelligent. That's a very perceptive way of looking at the world. That you should thank people. You should thank people for not being as violent as they could be. I don't know how you take yourself seriously, dude. That's I mean, it's unforgivable sometimes how solipsistic people are. How they never it never ceases to amaze me how people have this tunnel vision where they think I deserve civil liberties, but other people that they don't. Okay, now I understand that you did say that Tommy Robinson deserves a right to speak, but you're basically complimenting somebody for not being violent but still saying that somebody else shouldn't have the right to speak. How does that look? Okay, how does that look? You're saying that you're afraid that people in a foreign country, in the United Kingdom, which, by the way, I think you're a British citizen, right, Joseph? So you're saying that the Muslim community in Britain is more of a threat to to the Israelis than it is to the British, even though they hate Britain too. I mean, explain that. Explain it a little, okay? Because you're not going to Gaza to prevent anti-Semitism. You're not going to Lebanon to prevent anti-Semitism. You're going to cities like Luton and Birmingham and things like that. So I would think that the jihadist people there and the Islamists, because sure, there's a difference between those two, but I would think that they're more of a threat to Britain, seeing as they're in Britain, than they are to Israel. So it's a very I don't see how it's so hard to follow that logic, buddy. That's about it. Sorry I have to go this long, but I felt that there was a lot left on the plate from the last one. So have a great evening, and happy Pesach, because I'm also celebrating it. And good luck with your fake cause.